Okay, the first statement you're going to read it like you're going to say A is greater than B. Whichever
Yeah.
way this thing, this sign is facing, that symbol, that variable, that number happens to be greater than the other, right?
Yeah.
Similarly, how will you read this?
A is less than B.
A is less than B. Since that symbol, this symbol is facing B, B is greater than A, right?
Yeah.
Only difference that we've got over here is that we've introduced an is equal to sign as well.
Yeah.
How will we read the third statement? This one.
That A is bigger or equal to B.
Similarly, how will we read this?
A is smaller or equal to B.
Perfect. Now, how do we denote this on a number line? This is what it looks like. If I were to ask you to show x is greater than -2, what you're going to do is draw a hollow dot on top of -2, right?
Mhm.
I'll do this again for you. A hollow dot on top of -2, and since you need values greater than -2, the values on the right side of the x-axis are greater, and on the left side of the x-axis they're less, right?
Yeah.
So since the question asks wants us to take values of x which are greater than -2, we're going to draw an arrow towards the right. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Let me keep the relation. Similarly, if the question asks you to give values of x which are greater than or equals to -2, this time around, what change do you notice from this shape? What's
The dots, the circle's been colored in. Okay.
perfect? Perfect. When it's colored in, hold on, hold on, give me a minute. We're supposed to include this number. We're going to say if that's going to have an equal to sign next to it, and we're going to fill up the dot, right?
Yeah.
Now, this was just simple representation of inequalities on a number line. This is representation of inequalities on a number line.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're going to do the tricky part. Now we're going to do the tricky part. This is where I would want you to stay ready. Give me a minute. Inequality looks like this. 4x. In fact, not inequality. Let's do an equation first. For instance, the equation looks like this. 4x is equal to 36. How am I supposed to solve for x?
And we divide 36 by 4.
We divide both sides by 4. And we're left with x on the left side and we're left with 9 on the right side. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Simple. However, if I introduce greater than sign, less than sign instead of the is equal to sign, what will it look like? We're going to solve it with the same process. Instead of inserting the is equal to sign, we're going to be going on with the less than sign.
Yeah.
You're going to end up with an answer which says x is less than 9 instead of the answer that we were ending up here, which said x is equal to 9. You notice the difference?
Yeah.
And then now if the question says, asks you to represent this on a number line, what will you do? You will say, I'm going to draw a hollow dot. Why? Because we don't have an is equal to sign over here. So we need numbers which are less than 9. So that those numbers, all of those numbers exist towards the left of the number 9 on the number line.
Yep.
Now, this was pretty basic inequality. I'm pretty sure your exam is going to include stuff which is way more difficult than this. But this is important. This is important for us to learn because these are the basics towards graphing. Real life application. Can you read it out for me?
A packet of chips cost that 30.
Let's convert that into a value that you're familiar with. Let's convert it to pounds.
I didn't know this or that.
And let's convert 13 to just £3. Here we go.
A packet of chips costs £3. By setting up an inequality, find the maximum number of chips that can be bought with
Let's convert that number into £12.
£12.
Okay. Mm, hmm. Let's do £13. Okay.
Yeah.
If I were to ask you to solve it in the form of an inequality, I mean, how many packet of chips would you be able to buy if you have £13 and one of them costs £3?
You just do 13 divided by 3.
Perfect. So you're gonna be able to buy around 4 packet of chips exactly.
Yeah.
How much money would you be left with?
Like £4. Can you go my head?
Oh,
Oh, one.
Let me show
Oh,
you.
oh yeah, sorry, I counted 3, not 4. Oops.
True. So basically what you're going to do, essentially you're gonna say you do not know the quantity, right? Question
Yeah.
says find the number of chips.
Yeah.
3 is the price of one. What you do is you multiply the price with the quantity, and what do you end up with? The total bill or the total cost.
Yeah.
Another name for total cost would be the total bill. Now, what is the price of 1 packet of chips? 3, right?
Yeah.
Do we know the quantity that we're buying yet?
And
Do,
oh yeah.
does the question say so?
Yeah.
The question says we
No.
don't know the quantity yet, right? And what is our budget constraint? What number are we supposed to stay below? How much money do we have?
13
Uh,
pounds.
Notice something over here. I'm going to say less than or equals to 13. You can either spend the entire amount that you've got, or you can stay below that amount. Does that make sense? I mean, if you go to a grocery store with £13 and a packet of chips costs £3, and you're willing to spend the entire amount up to the entire amount, what are you going to say? You're going to say, I'm willing to spend up to 13, so that's less than or equals to 13. Either you can stay beneath that amount, you can spend £7, £8, 9, 10, 11, or 12, or you can go all out and spend the entire money that you have.
Yeah.
We're gonna what symbol are we going to use? Less than or equals to 13. Okay.
Yeah.
Now 3 into x would give us 3x. And since we're supposed to stay below 13, remember? Because that's the maximum amount of money that we have. How do we get rid of x?
You divide it by 3.
We divide it by 3 on both sides. We're left with x is less than or equals to 13 divided by 3. How much does 13 divided by 3 give us? 4.333.
Yeah.
And it goes on. In fact, I'm putting it down over here. Now, this value that we've just gotten is for x. Now, what does x represent?
The maximum number of chips.
The maximum number of packet of chips that we can buy. Now, you can buy 4 whole packet of chips. What about 0.333? Can you ask the shopkeeper to open up a packet of chips and just give you like 0.3% of the next packet of chips?
No.
Doesn't work like that. So you're gonna buy exactly how many packet of chips?
4.
4. You're gonna round it off. This is a sign for rounding off, and you can buy only 4 packet of chips. And you're gonna get back some change. If I'm not wrong, the change is gonna be in pennies, right?
Yeah.
Now, does that make sense?
Yep.
So that's some real life application of inequalities. Example that I had over here was in rupees. That's the currency that we use over here. And that was something similar as well. Take it.
Yeah.
Now we're going to be moving on to the stuff that we have in your course. And that kind of looks like this. Graphing of inequalities.
Yeah.
Did this come up in your exam? Whether did this come in your exam?
Yeah.
Did you have a tough time doing this?
I did. I forgot how to do this one.
Oh, yeah. I've already solved this for YouTube, so it's gonna have a couple of things that I want to erase. Give me a minute.
Yep.
Challenge. Are you familiar with basic coordinate geometry? If the question asks you to draw the line of x is equals to 1, the equation or the function which says x is equals to 1, what sort of a line would it look like?
It will just go, if x is equal to 1, it will cross the x-axis by 1. If it's y equals the y-axis by 5.
Perfect, right? If it's x is equal to 1, it's going to be a vertical line passing through the x-axis at the point 1. Similarly, if it's y is equals to 5, y is equals to 2, y is equal to 0, y is equal to negative 1, it's going to be a line passing through that number, but on the y-axis, right?
Yeah.
Although this is the x-axis, well, what's this going to be in this form of an equation? What is it going to look like? What's another name? What's the equation for x-axis?
X equals 1, isn't it?
X is equals to 1, that's this line.
Yeah.
Currently, what I'm asking you is this line, this
Oh.
black. If this is y is equals to 5, wouldn't this be y is equals to 4?
Oh, yeah.
Wouldn't this be y is equals to 3?
Yeah.
Y is equals to 2, y is equals to 1, and this is going to be y is equals to
0.
0. Another name for the x-axis is y is equals to 0. What's another name for the y-axis?
Y is x is equal to 0.
X is equals to 0. Since it's a vertical line, it's going to be in terms of x. So remember this. Whenever it's a horizontal line, it's going to be in terms of y. In fact, it's going to have the subject y. And whenever it's a vertical line, it's going to have a subject of x. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, the topic is not of coordinate geometry, but it's of inequalities. If I were to go down here and ask you, instead of drawing x is equal to 1, I ask you to shade the region represented by x is less than equals to 1. You're not drawing a line anymore. You're shading a specific area.
Yeah.
If the question says x is less than equals to 1, we are going to shade the entire region that you see on the left of this point, which is in pink. Because that entire region is on the left side of it. And not only is it on the left side of that particular number, but it's always also less than that particular number. So when the question says x is less than equals to 1, they're essentially asking you to shade the region on the left of that line. Simple.
Yeah.
If this question was x is greater than or equals to 1, what region would you shade?
The right side of x is equal to 1.
Perfect. Right side of the line or the region. No, the right side of the line x is equals to 1. Now this is a region in isolation. This is only one line defined by one line, and then you're shading a region based on that line. Imagine you got another inequality over here. Y is less than or equals to 5. The first step that you do You use draw the line y is equal to 5. That's your step. I label that down over here. So you have step number 1. Draw the line. And then you've got step number 2.
Yeah.
Shade the region. Identify. And then shade the region. So first of all, you're going to change it into an equation and write y is equal to 5. Now, where do you see y is equal to 5? That's this pink line up here.
Yeah.
Now, where do you see the region where y is less than equals to 5?
The shaded region.
Shaded region. Why? Because all the numbers which are below this region are obviously going to be valued which are less than 5. How? Take a look over here. How would you define this line? What would you call this blue line? Y is equal
Y
to
equals 4.
4. Now 4 is less than 5, right? How would you define this line? Y is equals to
3.
Similarly, this is going to be y is equals to
2.
So aren't all of these values less than 5?
Yeah.
So we're going to shade all the entire region which is below 5. Right?
Yeah.
Okay then. Remember I said something about an equation being in or an inequality being in isolation. So this is one inequality. This is also one inequality that we were solving over here. What if you get two inequalities which kind of look like this? They're asking you to shade the region that is represented by x is less than equals to 1, and at the same time shade another region which is represented by y is less than equals to 5. How will you, or what part would you shade?
Would you do the on the bottom left of both?
Perfect. So when we're shading x is less than equals to 1, they're asking us to shade on the left of this one. And when they're asking us to shade y is less than equals to 5, they're asking us to shade this, right? Shade this region. Now, where do you see both of these colors overlapping?
On the left, where they.
In the bottom left.
Yeah.
You're going to end up only shading of this part, which has both of these colors, and it would look like this. Just
Yeah.
like bottom left. Now the question says, write down the inequalities which define the shaded region. This is another type of question where instead of being given, instead of asking you to shade the region, they've already given you a shaded region, and they're asking you to define the shaded region over here. They've given you the shaded region R, and they're asking you to tell the entire set of inequalities which kind of bound that region. You're supposed to tell all the boundary walls in the form of an equation. So I've already mentioned one for you. This over here. What's the equation for this boundary wall?
Y is equals y is less or equals to 3.
True. What you're giving me is an inequality. But if I were to ask you to give me an equation, all right, let me introduce the difference between inequality and equation as well. Let me officially introduce it. Equation is something which has an is equals to sign. So this is an equation. And if I were to ask you to give me an inequality, then you're going to introduce either a greater than sign or a less than sign, depending on whatever you want.
Yeah.
If I were to ask you to give me an equation, you're going to say y is equals to 3, right?
Yeah.
Now, if I ask you to define the region or inequality which defines that region, what are you going to say?
Y is smaller or equal to 3.
Y is
smaller or equals to 3.
smaller or is equals to 3. So we can mention the first inequality as this. Do you see at the bottom of the screen, y is less than or equals to 3? So you're done with the first one. Can you define any other boundary wall that you see for the region R?
X equals to 5. Equation, or so did you say inequality or equation?
Why don't you give me the equation first, and then we're going to convert that into an inequality.
X equals 5, or Y equals 5, sorry.
Y is equals to 5 is going to be,
X equals 5.
I say x is equals to 5. That's going to be
Yeah.
a line passing like this. We don't have that line.
Okay.
And if you ask me, if you say y is equals to 5, that's going to be a line passing like this, and we don't have that line either.
Oh, okay. So there is another.
What about this line?
Hmm.
How do you define this line, this red line?
Y equals 0.
Y is equals to 0 is down here. Remember, we use these terms interchangeably. In fact,
Oh,
they're the opposite. If I were to ask you to define the y-axis,
so it'll be X equals 0.
shabash. If I were to ask you to define the y-axis, you're going to say x is equals 0. If I were to ask you to define the x-axis in terms of an equation, you're going to say y is equals 0. It's the opposite, the other way around.
Yep.
So now, if I draw this line again, you're going to x is equals to 0. Although this is the y-axis, but whenever you're supposed to describe a y-axis in terms of an equation, you're going to say x is equals to 0.
Yeah.
Okay, are we supposed to stay towards the right of this line or the left of this line? Where do you
The
see?
left
Is it towards the right of it or to the left of it?
towards the right.
Towards the right. Now, if I ask you to give me the inequality for this, what are you going to say?
That X is bigger than
Bigger or
Y.
equals to 0,
Oh,
right? X
yeah.
is greater than or equals to 0. Why? Because we're staying on the right of it. Why are we going on the right of it? Because the shaded region exists on the right side of this line. And where do we have the line area? Where do we have values bigger than this number? X is equals to 0. Obviously towards the right of it. 1 is bigger than 0, 2 is bigger than 0, 3 is bigger than 0, 4 is bigger than 0. So we need to stay towards the right side of this line. What line? X is equals to 0. So if I would
Yeah.
side of it, all the values on the right of it are greater. All the values on the left of it are less than the value, right?
Yeah.
Similarly, we're done with two lines, y is equals to 3 and y axis, which is x equals 0. If I were to ask you to define another value equation, or what would you say?
Identify.
I'll shade the ones that you're already done with. You just told me this line. Okay? You've just told me this line. You've drawn two boundaries mathematically of this shaded region. The shaded region which is given in green. Can you give me two more inequalities? Or first, why don't you give me two more equations which define this shaded region?
Y equals 0.
Y is equals to 0. Perfect. So I'm going to draw another line over here. That's for y is equals to 0. Now, are we supposed to stay above this line or below this line?
Above.
Above. Perfect. How do we know? One, obviously the region R or the green region is above this line. So if this equation is y is equal to 0, and if I'm supposed to stay above this line, are the values of y greater or less than above this line?
The greater.
Wait, perfect. Y is greater than or equals to 0.
Yeah.
You can see you've drawn three boundaries. You've drawn three boundaries for the shaded region R. If I ask you to draw one more boundary, which is over here, take a look. First of all, how would you define this equation? Now that's where things get tricky. Why? Because
Yeah.
this is a line which is going diagonally. Whenever we have a straight line, it's very easy to show what that line's equation is going to be. If it's horizontal, it's going to be y is equal to something. If it's vertical, it's going to be
Y is X.
x is equal to something.
Yeah.
Right? And if it's the y-axis, what's the equation for y-axis?
X equals 0.
Equals 0. What's if it's the x-axis? What's the equation for x-axis?
Y equals 0.
Y is equal to 0. Now, whenever we have a line which is going diagonally, that's where things get a little difficult. Let me show you what we're supposed to do over here. Take a look. We're gonna have Ira accompanying us in the class today because there's nobody to take care of her right now.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the equation which looks like this? Y is equals to mx plus c. Have you heard this?
I think so, yeah. I just can't
Okay.
remember.
Okay, so if I take 2 points, let's say I take let's say I take 2. Let's mark it in black. 2 and 2. What you're going to do is, first of all, you need to figure out two values. One is the value of m, the other one is the value of c. If you have these two lines, if you have these two values, you can essentially make up this equation and plug in those values and you will come up with the equation of that line. How do you find the value of m? What are the coordinates of this point up here?
It's 0, 2.
0, 2. What are the coordinates of this point down here?
0, 2, 0.
But how do we get the value of y? You say m. M is another name for saying slope or gradient.
Yeah.
M is equals to y2 minus y1 divided by or over x2 minus x1. This is your value of x. And if you're calling it x1, remember you're going to call this one y1. Similarly,
Yeah.
if you label this x2, what's the number next to it going to be?
X3.
On the left hand side, we have the x coordinate. On the right hand side, we have the y coordinate. Are you familiar with this? X coordinate and y coordinate. That's how you make up a point.
Yeah.
Give me a minute, please.
Yep.
Okay, we have another minute and 30 seconds to go. So on the left hand side, we have the x coordinate. On the right hand side, we have the y coordinate. So if we're labeling this as x1 and this as y1, and if we're labeling this as x2, the only thing that's left is
X3.
no, listen. On the left hand side, Rida, we always have the x coordinate. We're done with the x coordinates. On the right hand side, we have the y coordinates. Remember?
Yeah.
This is going to be y2. We just call it,
Oh, wait.
right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So instead of y2, you're gonna plug in 0 over here. And that's not something that I've made up. That's in the official igcse and O-level maths book, right? So y2 is gonna be 0. What's the value of y1? What value have we labeled y1? Rida, can you take a
Oh,
look?
sorry. 2.
2. What's the value for x2
2 again.
and x1?
0.
0. If you solve this, 0 minus 2 is how much? What's the value for 0 take away 2 is?
Just 0. I mean 2, sorry.
Negative 2. 2,
Negative 2. I
2,
can't think. No.
2 take away 0 is
Just 2.
2. Now, if you solve this, you get negative 1. 2 goes into 2 or fits into 2 one time, right? So we can
Yeah.
cancel 4 2's and just write 1. So the answer that we get is negative 1. What is this negative? What is this negative 1 showing? This negative 1 is showing the value of m.
Yeah.
So this is the value of m. So I can go up here and just plug this in. Y is equals to negative 1 x. No, what's the value of c? C is the y-intercept. Y-intercept is the location or the value where the line cuts the y-axis. So if I were to draw this line, which line am I talking about?
2. Yeah.
This one, which we never drew, but we just mentioned its points, right? Where does it cut the y-axis?
At 2, 0, 2.
0, 2. But if I were to ask you to just give me the value of the y-axis, not the entire coordinate, what are you going to say?
2.
2. So we can just say y is equal to negative x plus 2. Or I can rearrange it. I can rearrange it and make it look like this, 2 minus x. Or better yet, I can rearrange it like this. I can call it y plus x is equals to 2. I took this x on the left hand side so that everything is in positive values. And I can write it as y plus x is equal to 2. That is how Cambridge prefers to see your answer. Once you have an answer which looks like this, right, they would want you to convert it into a format where you don't have negative signs. So you're going to throw this over the other side. And Cambridge mark scheme prefers that you give your answer in a format which has only positive value.
Yeah.
So that's how you find out an equation. Now that we have an equation, imagine that I had shaded this region, this one. What are you going to say? Are we supposed to stay above this line to enter this region or to define this region? Or are we supposed to stay below this pink or purple line?
Stay below.
Stay below. And what's the symbol for below? Greater or less than?
Less than.
Similarly, if I were to ask you to define this wavy line which is drawn in red, how would you find this equation?
That.
We've just done the entire ordeal.
Yeah. That x is no. Yeah, y is less than 3. Less than.
We're already done with the line that we drew in red, remember? We're already done with the straight lines that we highlighted in red. With the only line that we're left with is the wavy line drawn in red. How would you define the wavy line drawn in red?
Maybe.
I'll erase all of those other lines so that you don't got confusion. I'm just asking about this red line. Remember, you told me all the other lines which define the shaded region are. You told me all the boundaries which define the shaded region are. Then you told me all the regions which define the shaded region are. Now you're supposed to define the red line first, which is drawn, which is highlighted in red, and then you're supposed to give me an inequality for that. How would I first of all find the value of or the equation for this line, this red line? Remember, didn't we just discuss that it's supposed to be in the format of y is equals to mx plus c?
Yeah.
right? What two values are we supposed to find for this equation to fill up this equation?
Um, x no 0 and 5 and 5 and 0. Oh,
Shabash, shabash. So we're gonna take 2 points. We're gonna say 0 and 5, and we can label this as 5 and 0. Out of these four variables, which two variables am I supposed to find out the value for?
what y2 and y1, x2 and x1.
No, I think you're getting confused with the value of m. Do you remember this? The arrows that are drew on top of these two variables, m and c.
Yeah.
You're supposed to find the values for m and c.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Right? The slope and y-intercept. How would I find the value of slope? This is where what you were telling me comes into play.
Yeah.
How do I find the value of m?
You do y2 take away y1 and x2 take away x1.
Perfect. Y2 take away y1, x2 take away x1. Now I am supposed to label the values of x1 and x2, y1 and y2. Can you help me label those?
Would y2 be 0, 0 take away 5 and then 5 take away 0?
Yes, what you're essentially saying is perfect, but let's just label them for the sake of ease. If I call this x2, what's this value going to be?
Y2.
Y2. If I call this value x1, what is this value going to be?
Y1.
Y1. Now that we've written it down, it's way easier to not mess things up, right? So 0 take away 5 divided by what's
Divided by 5 minus 0.
5 minus 0? 5 take away 0. So we have, what's the answer? 0 take away 5 is how much?
Minus 5.
Minus 5 or negative 5 divided by 5, which once again gives you the value of m as
Just minus 1.
just minus 1. Beautiful. Now you're done with this value, m. What's the other value that we're supposed to find?
C, the y-intercept.
The y-intercept. Beautiful. What's the y-intercept?
It'll be 5.
Yeah, it'll be 5. So the value of c, I can write that down over here as it is. That's going to be 5. The value of m that's down here that you found out was negative 1. Now, if I ask you to make this entire equation, what's it going to be?
Y equals minus 1x plus 5.
Excellent. Excellent. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
You just defined the curvy line drawn or highlighted in red. If I were to ask you to define the region, which region do you need? Is it above this line or is it below this line?
Below this line.
So would we introduce a greater than sign instead of the is equal to sign, or would we introduce a less than sign?
A less than sign.
Take a close look over here. I'm going to erase this. And instead of writing is greater is equals to, I'm going to write less than or equal is equals to.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Perfect. So let me bring that down over here. Hold on. Let me bring this down over here. The ones that are written in pink, they were already the answers that I had done for my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Now let me run you through the answers that you gave me. Remember, you asked me to stay below. Remember, remember you asked me to stay below this line?
Yeah.
So you told me the answer is going to be y is less than equals to 3?
Yeah.
And if you remember, you asked me to stay on the right side of this line because the shaded region is on the right. And you told me the answer is going to be x is greater than equals to 0. Here you go. That's your second answer. If you remember, you asked me to stay above this line. This line is y is equal to 0. If it's supposed to stay above it, it's going to be y is greater than equals to 0. The only thing that
Yeah.
doesn't match so far is the fourth answer that you've given. You asked me to stay below this line, and the symbol happens to be the same, but the representation doesn't happen to be the same. Is our answer correct?
Is it not correct because y and x and y both is smaller than 5?
All right, it is correct. I'll show you how. Take a look. Can I take away this value of 1? Because whether we write a 1 or we do not write a 1 doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
1 doesn't have a value, right? Especially if it's getting multiplied with another number, it doesn't matter if you write it or not. So I'm going to take away this 1. Does it look a little more like the answer that we have on the left?
Yeah.
Okay, what if I also take away this negative sign? In fact, what if I throw this entire negative x on the left-hand side? Wouldn't it look like this?
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
x is less than equals to 5. Doesn't it exactly match what we have on the left now?
Yeah.
Right? So we can represent these answers in multiple ways. And what the Cambridge prefers is that you represent your answer like this. We just discussed this a little while ago as well. Remember?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. We've got a few past paper questions over here, and we've still got around 3 more minutes to go in this lesson. I would want you to take a shot at this. And since we did not complete congruence and similarity and we jumped on to inequality, I'm going to send you a worksheet for inequality so that you can solve that. Meanwhile, and I'm going to be sending you another homework after we reschedule the class that we missed on Saturday. So we've got a question over here in the diagram. The equation of the line through B and C is 6x plus 7y is equals to 42. And the equation of line through A and B is y is equals to x over 5. So what two
Yeah.
lines are they referring to? They're referring to this line over here. Line through B and C is this one. Okay. This
Yeah.
is for that line. And the line that they're saying is through A and B is this one. And this is equal for the other line.
Yeah.
The question still hasn't started though. The official question starts over here. The region inside triangle ABC, what triangle are they referring to? This triangle, which hasn't been closed off yet. ABC triangle is defined by 3 inequalities. An inequality is supposed to have a greater than or less than sign. Currently, we only have is equals to signs.
Yeah.
And they've even given you the first answer. They're saying instead of writing y is equals to x over 5, one way that you can define this region is saying y is greater than equals to, oh sorry, just greater than x over 5. Now, why have they changed a less is equals to sign to a greater than sign? I'll tell you why. The orange line, which is represented by y is equals to x over 5. This is the orange line. And if I were to ask you to stay inside this triangle, would you say this region of this triangle, is it above this line or below this line?
Above.
Above. And if it is supposed to stay above, are we talking about values of y which are greater than or less than that particular equation?
Greater than.
Greater than. Now take a look, take a good close look. Rida, I'm going to change is equals to sign into a greater than sign.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they've done over here as well. Right? That's exactly what they've done over here as well. y is greater than x over 5. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
They're asking us to write down the other two inequalities. Other two. They're asking us to write down the other two inequalities. Can you write down the other two inequalities from this question? And do not forget, you're supposed to, the key word is inside. Inside what? Inside this triangle ABC. You're supposed to stay inside this triangle. So if I were to ask you to identify the green line, what's the equation of the green line?
X, like 6x and 7y is 42 equals 42.
Are we supposed to stay below that green line or above that green line to stay inside the triangle ABC?
Below.
So what's the symbol gonna be? Greater than or less than?
Less than.
Less than. So 6x plus 7y is less than 42. That's your second answer. Can you give me the final answer? You've defined the orange line, you've defined the green line. Can you define this red line? Essentially, I'm asking you, primarily, I'm just asking you for the equation of this line, and then we're going to change it into the inequality of this line.
X equals 2.
Perfect. Perfect. This is x is equals to 2. Now, if I try this triangle ABC, what would you do to change this equation into an inequality?
X is bigger or equals to bigger
X is
to 2.
bigger than 2. Bigger than 2. X is greater than 2. Now, Rida, why aren't we introducing greater than equals to, less than equals to, or greater than equals to signs? Why aren't we introducing the is equals to sign? Why are we only resorting to writing down either a greater than symbol or less than symbol? Why aren't we including the is equals to sign?
Not too sure.
Not too sure? No problem. The key word is over here. Can you read this?
Oh, yeah. Inside.
They're asking us to stay inside the triangle. If I were to write an is equals to sign, that would also include the line AB or the line BC or the line AC. Are we supposed to include those lines? Are we supposed to include the green line, the orange line, or the red line?
Yeah.
No, we're not. Remember, the question says stay inside the triangle.
Yeah.
Question says stay inside the triangle, so we're not supposed to include those lines. So that is why we will not insert, or we will not put an is equals to sign next to a symbol. And for that, I'll have to take you back here. Remember, if we did not have an is equals to sign, we drew a hollow dot. And if we had an is equals to sign, we drew a filled dot.
Yeah.
Similar is the case over here. Similar is the case over here. Let me set up these. We've got another set of axes, and imagine we have a box.
Yeah.
If I were to ask you to define all the equations which define the boundaries of this box or this square, what would you call this line?
Y equals 5.
Y is equal to 5. What would you call this line?
X equals 5.
Perfect. What would you call this line?
X equals 0.
X is equal to 0. What would you call this line?
Y equals 0.
Y is equal to 0. Perfect. Now I would quickly ask you to change these equations into inequalities. You're supposed to stay inside. You're supposed to stay inside this triangle. Sorry, this square. In order to stay inside the square, do you need to be on the right side of this line or to the left of this line?
On the right side of the line.
On the right side of the line. So this is going to change into x is greater than 0. Would I include the less than or is equal to sign, or would I just stay with this, stick with this, whatever I've written down up till now?
Sorry.
Come again?
Could you repeat that, please, sir?
Sure. If the question says shade the region inside this square box, would I include an is equal to sign, or would I not include an is equal to sign and just write this inequality like this?
You would not include a equal sign.
Perfect. Perfect. Why? Because if I am supposed to stay inside the square box, I am not supposed to include that red line. And if I write x is greater than is equal to 0, I would be essentially including that red line as well. Right?
Yeah.
Now, how would this inequality change? X is equal to 5. Oh, sorry. How would this equation change into an inequality? What would you write it down? Instead of y, x is equal to 5, it's going to be x is
bigger than 5.
Less than 5.
Oh, that's...
Because if you go to the right of it, you're essentially
out
of the square. You need to go on the left of this line because the values of x are less than 5 on the left side of this line, right?
Yeah.
And how would you change this inequality? Sorry, how would you change this equation into an inequality?
Y is greater than 5.
Y is bigger than 5 is obviously going to be above this line, and then you're going to be going outside the square box. You need to stay inside the square box.
So y is smaller than
Y is smaller than 5. And one last thing to go. So we've done this as well. And y is equal to 0 is this line. How would you change this equation into an inequality?
Y is less than 0.
You're going in all the wrong directions. Y is less than 0 over here.
Oh, y is greater than 0. Sorry, I looked at the wrong one.
No problem. Y is greater than 0. So this is going to change into this. Now I can erase all the equations, and all the inequalities that you are left with are going to be defining the region inside the square box.
Yeah.
Does it make sense? Does this make sense?
Yeah.
This is where the lesson for inequalities is complete. Obviously, this is not enough for you to be able to score good in your exam. For that, you'll need to do, at least 15 to 16 past paper questions with all of its parts. I'm going to be sending you a worksheet for igcse inequalities, and that's going to be due before the next lesson. Whenever we get to reschedule it, I did not get a response from your side yet. So do let me know whenever you can reschedule that lesson that we missed on Saturday. And I would prefer if you can give me the solutions for it before that lesson. And remember, Rida, this time do not solve it on Microsoft, or do not solve it on Word or any other document online. Try to get a printout of it. It's only going to be maximum, it's going to be 7, 8 pages or 10 pages at max. If you can get a front and back two-sided print, it's not going to be that lengthy a worksheet. If you can solve it with and then send it back, at least I'll be able to see your steps, because when you solve it on Word, you're not able to give the entire set of steps. And I obviously have to mark you on your calculation steps. I need to see the working, right? Let me write this down.